It has been 30 years now. We still have World AIDS Day because there are, in fact, tens of millions of people still dealing with it. Where's it going? We're going to find out next.
I've spent a decade taking a bite out of conspiracy theories, unraveling urban legends, and grappling with worldwide top secret issues.
I've even racked up some of their awards.
All while ferreting out the bottom line.
On all topics, controversial, bizarre, and taboo. Interviewing movers and shakers, agitators and muckrakers.
But that doesn't answer my question. That is all I'm answering.
With me, Gary Harrison, as your guide.
Harrison with you, your new best friend. This is, of course, Go Harrison, streamcasting live and FM broadcasting on the East and West Coast of the United States. This is World AIDS Day, an annual event which happens throughout the month of December across the planet of Earth. I want to introduce to you a real hero in this movement, a man, a long-term survivor. His name is Mel England, an openly POZ actor, an activist who starred on stage, off-Broadway, and internationally, by the way. And here in Hollywood, he's been in a slew of indie films, including his latest, called Ron and Laura Take Back America. Yeah. And it's funny. And it's just been released on Amazon and iTunes. And Mel England, I want to welcome you to Go Harrison.
Why, thank you, Harrison. It's great to see you, as always.
It's good to see you, too. And a part of your story, apart from being an actor and all the rest of it, is you have, unlike, I would say, most actors, you've actually been out about being POZ for a long time and still had a career.
Wow, yeah, well, thank you for having us, and thank you for doing a show about World AIDS Day. We need to keep talking about it. Yeah, I have, well, you actually, we've been talking about this for a long time,
but they haven't. So we're going to pretend that we've never met. TV.
But I did a show back in 2009 called Swimming with the Polar Bears, where I had just gone through an AIDS-related sort of issue and had cancer. And I've been positive since I was 19, and I got very sick and almost died in 97 when I was about 28. And then my whole life had to start over. Yeah. And after a couple of years of getting it together and, getting sober, I did a bunch of stuff, and I went back to class and I started working again professionally. And then I came out to LA, did this indie film, and it was premiering, and over the summer I was getting ready for that, and then suddenly I had this cancer. So I had to go to treatment, and I dealt with all that. And the next, literally, December, I got the all clear from the cancer.
Yeah.
And then the next month, I remembered that I had to do this solo show that I'd been commissioned to do for this school in New York, and it was supposed to be about the environment. And it just hit me. I was like, how do I do? And I'd come up with the title, Swimming with the Polar Bears. And I thought,
because the polar bears, instead of walking around on frozen glaciers, in fact, are swimming now.
Yeah. And so, but I come up with that title sort of, months before.
And you ended up in Copenhagen at the Climate Summit, and you did it in front of the United Nations. And so you've done some extraordinary things to help everybody. And we are going to talk a little bit about Standing Rock. Why? Because it turns out, Mel, you are also Navajo and Pueblo. You're also Native. This is a big deal. The first time, by the way, the largest gathering of Native cultures in the world in 100 years, all taking place in North Dakota. In fact, the Indians, whatever they're called now, who knows anymore?
Indigenous Native American,
all of the above, have actually gotten together and for the first time in a couple of 100 years smoked the peace pipe. They all have united.
Yeah.
Now, if that doesn't scare the shit out of Uncle Sam, right, after dividing everybody up, it is now one unified tribe. And if they can do it, we can all do it with them, I think.
Yeah, that's actually a really great point. I think it's very, in spite of, the horrible adversity, there is something that can come out of that transcends that. And actually, that's been a huge part of my story as an AIDS survivor. And, I think that we always have to look for the hope in the midst of, the devastation and the conflict. And certainly, that's been something I lived.
Let's jump into World AIDS Day because it is an annual event. It's all over the planet. And it's not just like a Mother's Day card. There's a lot going on. Not everyone is involved some way or the other, but the impact of AIDS after decades, you don't even know anymore. But long-term survivors, not something that people anticipated, say, in the 1990s.
Yeah.
When they said, you've got 6 months to get your affairs together, and now suddenly it's 2016, and it's like, well, I actually didn't plan to have a career.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happened to me. In fact, when I was 19 and I was diagnosed, they gave me 6 months to live.
Yeah.
And, fortunately, I sort of had been aware and listening, and I just knew I didn't want to get on the drugs because
Right.
the people that were taking the drugs seemed to get sick and die very quickly. So I stayed away from the drugs for a long time, and then I did, finally get sick in '97, and thank God they had these new drugs that so many AIDS activists and scientists and people worked so hard to figure that out.
Yeah.
And so people can live. And the issue now, 30 years later, it's such an interesting thing because people are saying, like, well, rhetorically, what's the point of still talking about this? Because the media is telling us the epidemic is over because people can get long-term treatment and they can live to be. Now I can live to be an old man.
Right.
My health is actually better than it's been my whole adult life. But the problem is that there was just a report that came out, 31 million people have HIV around the world and only 17 million have treatment. And so the issue is not only that whatever that is, can we do the math? Almost 50% of the people
Right.
aren't in treatment.
Right.
But on top of it, the new drugs, what they are allowing to have happen is a sort of a suppression of the virus so that it becomes less likely that the virus will spread. So we have a moral imperative, not just to the people who have HIV that need the treatment, but also to everybody else, that we get everybody in treatment so that we can end this. Eventually, I think, hopefully, I know in my lifetime we're going to have a cure.
There's also prophylactic care that's
Right.
being used widely. It's called PrEP, prophylactic, whatever it is. In other words, you take something similar to what one would take if one were positive. It's just missing one of the components, and you take it as sort of birth control for the virus.
Yeah, and it works.
Yeah, it's about,
Now,
if you're compliant, it's about 97% effective.
I mean, there have been some, and of course it doesn't change the fact that we all still need to talk about safe sex and we need to be responsible and all of that. But the reality is there's just no excuse for why we don't have everybody in the world. To this day, I feel so lucky as an American.
Yeah.
And I feel so lucky that I was in New York City and then Los Angeles and got some of the best treatment on earth.
Right.
Because so many people really made that happen.
Yeah.
I'm here on the wings of so many people who died and who paved the way. It just kills me anytime I think about that there are people that need to get treatment and don't have it. So we have a lot of work to do.
We do. Women of color, particularly people of color, are the ones not being reported as they're seroconverting, becoming positive in huge volumes of numbers because they're just not reported on, period. When they get murdered, it's not reported unless you roll in tanks, and it makes for good CNN television. That was called cynicism and sarcasm, by the way, in case you really weren't abundantly clear. So the infection rate is still phenomenally high because somehow, believe it or not, this basic education of use a condom or take PrEP or do this or these drugs may or may not be available is not part of the education of a whole group of people. They just don't know.
And I think it goes into a larger respect, not just to those various sort of communities, but it's our whole society still has this, and it's one of the things that people in the HIV/AIDS community have been talking about for years now, which is to end the stigma.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be. That's been probably the major part of my own recovery and getting back on track and deciding to come out as a POZ actor in Hollywood, which is a risk, really.
Yeah.
There's about 3 of us, maybe 4 or 5. But the reality is that there is this idea that there's something to be ashamed of or stigma. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, it's just if you got it by sex or drugs or whatever. This is like we're having a 1950s conversation.
And we're going back to the 1950s.
Yeah, well,
so here it comes, baby.
So I think that for one of the most important things for me when people asked me, why are you deciding to come out, number one, it was just like, this is my life.
Yeah.
This is who I am. I've been a survivor since 1989, and I beat all the odds, and I was very lucky, and I had a lot of help. But this is one of the most incredible things that I could ever do, and why would I be ashamed of that? So I feel this need not only to talk about it, but also to open up the opportunity for other people to feel like, wow, if these people can be open about it. One of my great friends, Sherry Lewis, a couple of years ago when I was going to do the cover for Plus magazine and tell my story about being POZ, Sherry sort of became and she's out openly POZ actress and singer, and she's been out and an advocate for years.
We're down to like 40 seconds.
Oh.
And I love this story.
And she took me under her wing and said, help me, be like, yeah, do it. Come on. We need more people to be out and talking about this.
Well, you are talking about it, destigmatizing that which is on every street corner in the nation, and it's the new normal to actually be who you are and be part of the solution. I want to thank you so much, Mel England. Mel England is an openly POZ actor, an activist who starred on stage, off Broadway, internationally. And here in Hollywood, he's been in a slew of indie films, including his latest, Ron and Laura Take Back America. Did I mention Ron and Laura Take Back America? Just released on Amazon and iTunes. Ron and Laura Take Back America. If I didn't, I just did.
See it, it's funny.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mel.
Thank you.